What if the very traits you've been told to hide are actually signs you've been chosen for something rare? Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll understand why Carl Jung believed that those who feel too much, think too deeply, and live too intensely aren't broken. They're evolving. Jung once said, "The greatest burden of life is not to live too much, but to live too little." But what happens when the life you recall to live doesn't match what the world expects? Today, we'll explore 8 life-changing signs that you read. Part of a rare psychological group Jung believed plays a pivotal role in humanity. If you've ever felt out of place, too sensitive, or too complicated, this isn't a flaw, it's a signal. And once you understand it, it could transform how you see yourself and your life's purpose forever. The emotional depth most people fear. Let's start with something you've probably experienced. Have you ever felt like your emotional reactions are just more intense, more vivid, more exhausting? Carl Jung spent decades studying this. He discovered that certain individuals don't just feel emotions. They experience emotionally charged psychic currents that move through the unconscious like deep rivers. To you, emotions aren't fleeting moods. They're entire ecosystems. When someone else feels sad, they shake it off. When you feel sad, you dive into an ocean of meaning, connection, memory, and metaphor. This isn't weakness. It's emotional complexity. But here's where it gets dangerous. Society tells you to calm down, be reasonable, or stop over. Jung warned that when people suppress deep emotional experience, they don't become balanced, they become fractured. He called this psychic splitting, when part of you knows the truth, but another part plays along to fit in. They're fighting a civil war inside themselves, trying to be normal in a world that fears depth. That's why so many emotionally deep people feel drained. But Jung taught something radical. Emotional intensity isn't a disorder, it's an evolutionary signal. And in just a few moments, I'll show you how Jung advised people like you to harness this depth without burning out. The curse and gift of relentless curiosity. Sign number 2, you question everything. Most people live what Jung called surface lives. They accept cultural scripts without asking why, but not you. You can't help but ask the difficult questions. Why do people tolerate lives that make them miserable? Why do we follow systems that no longer work? Why do shallow conversations pass for meaningful connection? You're not just asking for truth, you're exposing illusions. Jung believed this is a sign of transcendent consciousness. It's a mind that sees beyond what is and imagines what could be. But here's the problem. The clearer you see, the lonelier you often become. Why? Because when you question the status quo, you threaten people's psychological safety. That's why people may label you negative or cynical when, in fact, you're courageously honest. According to Jung, this trait is connected to what he called prophetic vision, the ability to sense future problems and opportunities before they are obvious to others. But this vision comes with responsibility, and we'll get to that in the final sign, the lonely path of radical independence. Sin 3, you've built fierce independence not because you wanted to, but because you had no choice. Jung said, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely, but there's a hidden cost. When you stand on your own, you attract 2 kinds of people: those who respect your independence and want to grow alongside you, and those who feel threatened by it or worse, want to control it. And you've done that, at least more than most. And in sign number 7, I'll show you how Jung advised people like you to do exactly that. According to Jung's research, people with rare psychological profiles often go through life events that force them to develop. Maybe you learn the hard way that depending on others for your sense of self is like building a house on quicksand. So you built yourself. Jung called this process individuation, the journey toward becoming whole, unique, and authentic. You sense their moods before they speak. You feel tension in a room before anyone else notices. Jung found that independent personalities often fall into confusing relationship dynamics because others project onto them. That's why you may find people either idolizing you or trying to tear you down. It's not about you, it's about their unresolved inner conflicts. But if you're always scanning others, you risk forgetting to check in with yourself. Jung warned that this can lead to what modern psychologists call empathic burnout. So what's the solution? The solution? Learning to recognize the difference between genuine connection and subtle manipulation. The invisible burden of intuition. Sign 4. You possess an intuitive awareness that borders on the uncanny. Jung shocked the psychological world by naming intuition as a legitimate cognitive function, not just a feeling, but a way of perceiving reality. You don't just observe people, you read them. But you can't avoid it, not for long. That's because your psyche is wired for authenticity, not popularity. And when you deny your nature, your body keeps the score. This isn't magic. It's what Jung called perception. Via the unconscious, your mind picks up subtle cues most people miss. But here's the danger. But because their soul is trying to wake them up. But here's where it gets profound. If you don't learn to set energetic boundaries, this sensitivity will exhaust you. Jung discovered that highly intuitive people often become what he called unconscious therapists. They absorb everyone else's pain without realizing it. You've probably spent time being the emotional anchor for your friends, family, even strangers. But here's the hard truth. Growth often requires shedding layers of identity ends. Sometimes, relationships too. Maybe the friends who once fit now feel distant. Jung taught his clients to develop psychic hygiene, the practice of holding space for others without losing themselves in the process. And soon, I'll share how you can do this too. Maybe the places you used to find comfort now feel hollow. Jung called this process psychological death and rebirth. The urge for meaning that won't leave you alone. When you stop performing and start being, life changes. Sign 5. You crave meaning more than you crave acceptance. It's about alignment. But with growth comes grief. But here's the beauty. Jung once said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. Maybe you've tried following society's script, Jung said. Get the job, wear the mask, play the role. You become so good at supporting others that you forget to ask for support yourself. Jung taught that the solution isn't to close your heart, it's to become discerning. Who has earned the right to your energy? Who reciprocates your depth? Jung believed that when you feel this inner pull, you're not imagining things. It's about alignment with life's deeper patterns. Jung warned that if you ignore this call, life becomes hollow. When you learn to protect your emotional presence, you stop burning out and start thriving. But no matter how well you perform, you feel that gnawing sense of emptiness. When you betray your deeper values, Jung found that people who ignore their quest for meaning develop symptoms: anxiety, depression, burnout, not because they're broken. When you live authentically, you don't just change your own life, you become what Jung called an agent of cultural transformation. Your refusal to settle for shallow goals forces others to confront their own avoidance. It's not always comfortable, but it's necessary. The grief of outgrowing your old life. Sin 6. You've outgrown people, places, and beliefs that once felt like home. It's not always easy, but it's necessary. Jung wrote, we meet ourselves time and again in 1,000 disguises on the path of life. Maybe your old career feels meaningless. It's not about superiority. You're not just losing relationships, you're losing versions of yourself. Jung discovered that people on the path of self-actualization often experience the dark night of the soul, a period of loneliness so deep, it tests everything you thought you knew about yourself. Once you stop shrinking to fit your past, you attract new connections, relationships based on resonance, not convenience. The rare power of psychological presence. Sign 7. You offer a level of presence that transforms people. The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is a reaction, both are transformed. When people speak to you, they don't just feel heard, they feel seen. You listen beneath the words. You hold space without rushing to fix. You allow contradictions to exist without judgment. This is a healing act. But here's the trap. People with this gift often fall into helper syndrome constantly. The undefined purpose calling you forward. And finally, sign 8. You feel a larger purpose calling you, but you can't quite define it. It's what he called an archetypal summons, the soul's call to become something more than the ordinary. This isn't about ego. But if you answer it, life becomes meaningful. And here's his most important insight. Your purpose isn't just personal, it's collective. You're not here just for yourself. You're part of what Jung called the evolution of consciousness. Through your depth, your honesty, and your refusal to settle for shallow answers, you help humanity grow. The invitation. If even half of these signs resonated with you, you're not too much. You're exactly enough for the work you're here to do. Jung believed people like you are the bridges between what is and what could be. So own your intensity, honor your sensitivity, stop apologizing for your depth. Because as Jung once said, the world will ask you who you are. And if you don't know, the world will tell you. But you do know, and now it's time to live like it. Drop a comment below, tell me which of these signs felt true for you. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this message. And subscribe, because this is just the beginning of exploring who you truly are. Remember, you're not here to fit in, you're here to help the world wake up.